Hello, everybody, and welcome to
Yeah.
season 4. We're almost at the end of our last season of this year because next week is our last episode, and then we run right into the holidays. And it don't make sense to be having episode and then break, an episode and then break. So we just gonna let this ride on out until 2022, baby. So we ended up the year with for the culture, and I thought that this was, the way God orchestrated this thing, it really has come full circle. It's been a great conversation. It's been a great year having these conversations with you all. We started off with, a good foundation on what the prophetic is with season 1. And we told y'all we're not psychics. And the goal of this show, if you don't know, if you're new to it, we just give you prophetic insights with practical perspective on everyday life. Things that we deal with. Just because we're kingdom people does not mean that we walk around with our head in the clouds all the time, like, oh, no. We are spirit beings in a physical body on this earth, and we need to
Mhm.
know how to interact with each other and how to be careful. And one underlying thing, and I really hope y'all have been paying attention to this season, and we've been talking about unity, and that has been a consistent theme. But another theme that has come up this season has been division, and
Mhm.
being careful of that spirit of division that comes. And today we're going to talk about a big spirit of division among Black men and Black women. Now, last night I had a show, and we were talking about I Can't Escape My Crazy Ex, and some stuff from previous episodes that come on, like,
Yeah.
the strength of Black women, you know, being like her kryptonite.
Super
We
women.
also kind of, Horace made some great points last night about Black men, and he said something that I want to kick the show off with because it was so poignant. I'm really saddened and bothered by this fact that when did Black men stop protecting Black women? When did we start preying on them to do them harm? When did we start, instead of protecting them, start pursuing? He said, I saw the video, the guy trying to abduct the Black woman off her porch. I said, yeah, that's been happening. And he said, I saw the video of women. He said it was an interview where they said, if there were no men in the world, what would you do? And he said the women was like all kinds of stuff, like just being able to go for a run or a walk, whether it's day, night, evening, whatever, being able to do certain things without fear. And he said that just really broke his heart. And he said, and then on top of that, seeing the video with a Black man, there's been 2 incidents that we've seen on social media, Black men chasing Black women, trying to abduct them. One, most recently, one was trying to walk her dog. She couldn't get off her porch to go walk her dog, and the man tried to come and get her. And then a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, where the woman was going into her apartment in a building in New York or somewhere, and it was just seconds. And so obviously, y'all caught on camera, but still, this is where we are, and talking about division and what's this great divide between Black men and Black women. And we're talking about unity and for the culture, and how can we, be stronger together. But we can't do that with what's going on in these good streets today. Like,
Mhm.
for real. And I got my book. I told you I was gonna have my book. I got my book. Because what you're not gonna do is tell me that this wasn't real or that this didn't happen. And as you can see, my highlighter, I got my book. So I'm gonna read it to you later on, so you can see the inner workings of how we of the generational things that's woven into the
Mhm.
fabric of this nation, and how we treat each other as a community, and how we've gotten so far away from each other. But our goal today is to uncover those things and give you some tools on how we can get back to loving each other and coming together and uniting and supporting one another, in the spirit that we're meant to be. It's not good for man to be alone. That's what God said. That's what God said.
Doc, one of the things that what you said, the theme that has come out is about unity and division.
Mm-hmm.
And although we're talking about for the culture in general, okay, not I'm not even talking color right now or ethnicity. All right. One of the things that we have to recognize as believers, okay, is that, and I said this before, a tool of the enemy is division, is separation, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so if he can create division, what does it say? A house divided against itself cannot
Cannot
stand.
stand.
So, like you said, an ongoing theme has been unity and division. When we bring it down to the culture and we bring it down to as we say African Americans, Black Americans, when you look at it and bring it down to us,
Mm-hmm.
it it gets it's even worse, okay?
Right.
Because we're talking about a people who have been enslaved. We're talking about our people who have and are oppressed. We talk about systemic injustice and everything that's systemic, okay? And so one of the tools that the enemy has used, and I think we touched on this, has been colorism,
Mm-hmm.
which brings division, and actually the black man versus the black woman is
Right.
a tool
Yes.
that that's been used. And as I was doing some research on black men versus black women, you always stirring me up to go back into time in my younger years. Uh, this is not something that's new. This
Right.
discussion is definitely not new. And when you begin to do research and you analyze the research, what you have to do is you have to look at who wrote it. Because
Yeah.
what you will find is that if it's a black man, it's going to be, even on research, they will take and use their hypothesis and their discussion and how they arrive at their conclusion. And it might be swayed more towards one way, his way of thinking. And
Right.
when you look at the black woman, if they're the author of it, okay, it's going to be screwed towards, okay, black women as far as what they're actually doing is blaming each other, okay, for the state of the the disunity, even the dysfunction, sometimes even the animosity that exists between black women and black men,
Right.
okay? And so uh it's I know you had the thing about the book about Willie Lynch. So here's something here. I'll tell you how far back it goes. Um, and I know you got the Willie Lynch for slavery, but I'm going to talk about research that has been done
Mm-hmm.
and research that has been analyzed and books that have been written, articles, journals, doctorals that have been written. Okay. It goes back all the way to the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't something new. As a matter of fact, many of you, unless you're in my age group or older, or you're into research and you study this, the Monahan report. It's called. It was named after Daniel Monahan. It goes back to 1965,
Mm.
talking about this very thing that we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
But it was written as a result of the census. Y'all better get this. From 1950 and 1960, it showed a disconnect in the black family. Here I'm going. A disconnect in the black family. And so there became much debate on the results of the census reports from 1950 and 1960 as to how it characterized black families and it crumbling because what they were saying is by 1960 the black family was crumbling. Now, Daniel Manahan, you got to look at what the white people saw, and then you got to look at what black Americans who were in education and doing research, what they saw and what they gathered. Okay,
That's a poignant point.
that's right.
You have to understand that when it comes to research,
Yes,
there's a different perspective and view.
yes.
And so it matters who's doing the research
Mm-hmm.
of how pure
Mm-hmm.
that research is. I'm always looking at research that I
Yes.
see on Twitter or in a news article or
Uh-huh.
something. And I'm like, well, who did y'all poll? Who was your
Thank you.
who was your participant pool?
Mhm.
How did you identify these people to get these results? You should always question it and find out for yourself and do a little bit of digging, because if you can prove anything you want if you find the right applicants.
Yes.
But if you genuinely want to find out in its purest state what's true and real when it comes to research in a particular demographic,
Mm-hmm.
you control your bias.
Thank you.
And that's a big part of it. And
Yes.
when it comes to academia, first of all, you're talking about Black people as a marginalized group overall, but then it goes even further as you start getting into Black women, so on and so forth. And
Yes.
part of the challenge is we often get lumped in minority. We
Yes.
are not minorities, but because when people do research,
Yes.
instead of saying Black, Hispanic, and really breaking down each ethnic group, they say minority. But you muddy it because you don't really know who's who and what's what.
Yes.
And now you don't get a true depiction of what it's like for this marginalized group. So they continue to be marginalized even the more, because instead of specifically identifying you, you're lumped in with people. Do you know that that's just another way of dehumanizing and trying to erase you?
But here's the thing. Yes, I agree. But here's the thing about the Monahan report.
Yeah.
Now, I'm saying this because we're going back to, I'm just going back to 1965. Okay.
Right.
The actual name of the report is The Negro Family, the case for national action. Wow. The Negro Family, that's what it's called, the case for national action.
Wow.
That was in 1965. Okay. So in 1965, there was an attitude and a realization that something negative was happening to Black families, which means that regardless of the Willie Lynch, whatever, we still were families, but something happened. And between 1950 and the 1960 census and the research, and when he did the research and came out the report, he said, we need national action because something is happening to the Black family. Here we are in 2021.
I was going to say, ironically, we need the same thing.
We're talking about a national problem with the Black family.
And we still haven't resolved it.
And we still have not resolved it because of what approach you will take and the conclusion and what people want to think.
Correct.
Now, all of the reports go back to slavery and the systematic oppression and the brainwashing and all of the things that were done to us to not only dehumanize us, but to dehumanize our Black men and to humble them. Okay. And at that, as we are putting down the Black man, we were kind of, and I'm going to use this word, kind of, putting the Black woman up here. But ironically, what we don't realize is that even that, when you put the Black woman over the Black man, even that was riddled in sarcasm.
Mhm.
Okay, because even then the black woman was seen as if you got to go back, because then there was still a portrayal of the black women as sassy, as they call it, sassy mammies. You the mammy, okay? In other words, the spirit of seraphim, what is the name? Seraphim, and the spirit of Jezebel.
Right.
Okay, so one appeared to be, the Jezebel was the whorish woman. She wild, she street, she, this is all she want to do. And the other one was the one who was dominant. She took care of the home. She knew how to
Right.
rule her house. Even if she berated the black man and the children, she was more acceptable by everybody, even white America.
Right. You made
Which
some
is
good
all a
points.
lie. Okay.
And these are all great introductions into what I'm about to share
Uh-huh.
from this book. And these are just excerpts. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the first is about basically what mom said. It's all about breaking the will to resist, and
Yes.
basically is break the mind but keep the body. And one of the things they said, you must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring. Concentrate on future generations. If you
That's right.
break the female mother, she will break the offspring in its early years of development. And when the
Mm-hmm.
offspring is old enough to work, she
Mm-hmm.
will deliver it up to you, for her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original
Mm-hmm.
breaking process. And so it goes on, and you start talking about, how they broke the man. They said, don't kill him, but put the fear of God in him, for he can be useful for future breeding. So the whole point was
Yes.
to use the body again, break the mind, but
Mm-hmm.
keep the body. The breaking process of the African woman was test her in every way, because she is the most important factor for
Yes.
good economics. Understand
Yes.
that as a people, we have always been seen, and we continue to be seen as good economics. And so it
Right.
says,
Thank
when in
you.
complete submission, she will train her offspring in the early years to submit to labor when they become of age.
Yes.
It was all about breaking, right? It was all
Breaking.
about breaking. It
Uh-huh.
was all about breaking. And it says, um, um, it says, in her natural uncivilized state, she would have a strong dependency on the uncivilized nigger male, and she would have a
Mm-hmm.
limited protective tendency toward her independent male offspring, and would
Mm-hmm.
raise the female offspring to be dependent like her. Nature
Yes.
has provided for this type of balance by her being left alone, black women, by her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed. The ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state to a frozen independent state. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reversed roles.
Rose.
So you want to know why men are feminine when they're raised by a single mother? That's
To
why.
reverse the
Why
role.
women, and why they teach their daughters to be strong and take on that male role, and all of that stuff.
But
Fulfilling the young
also
male's
is,
life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong.
okay, and here again, that is not only division, but it is undermining the very nature of family as
Family,
God intended it to be,
absolutely.
because man was supposed to be the head of the household.
It's a
And
complete
it's,
perversion
it's
of God's
complete.
order and law.
Right. And
Absolutely.
right. So now here is again a strategy to not only undermine, to to not only enslave us, but to undermine the natural order that God intended for
Mm-hmm.
things to be. And
Oh yeah.
so, with that, when you do that, and notice it wasn't about the generation then. Oh my God, thank
It's
you.
about the future. It
It was
says
about the
concentrate on the
future.
future generation.
Okay.
It's very
So
clear.
they were strategizing not on the now, but they
No,
were
the future.
strategizing on the future.
Oh
So
yeah.
now you look at this book and you look at when he did this during slavery.
In the
Now you look
1700s.
at the 1965 Monahan report. Then you look at all of the things that have come since then, the
Come
research
on.
that's been done by black men, black women, and whites, okay, you're still seeing this underlying theme. And even though we're not in slavery, that mentality, we always talk about that
it's
mentality,
still a practice because
is
it's
still
something
in
they taught.
practice.
And you don't, if you don't think that this has been handed down within their structure, you're wrong. Because here,
Yeah.
let me finish this up and, and show y'all something. Because she has become psychologically independent, she will train her female offsprings to be psychologically independent. What
Uh-huh.
have you got? You've got the nigger woman out front and the man behind and scared.
And
This is
scared.
a perfect situation for sound sleep and economics.
Yes.
When it
Okay.
boils down to it, it's all about, and they say, in other words, it's body over mind. They're
Mhm.
not interested in anything else. It's just, that's why they can tell you to shut up and dribble.
Yes, all they wanted were you to
Entertainment, find a way to make them another dollar. It's economics. And
damn
so
it, it's
guess what?
economics.
This
Hmm.
whole concept, the only thing that's changed is that it has evolved in how this practice comes to be in everyday life. But this is still real
Yeah.
and happening. If you don't believe it, look at the structure now. Look at how black women raise their children.
But
And we wonder why boys are raised different from girls and vice versa. And then look at how black men raise their children. If you do find a single black father, or if you, on the occasion that you do have a successful, strong black family structure, look at the dynamics and all of those different things and how those children are raised.
and what has happened over the years, we don't even realize what we've done and how we've adopted it because it just become a part of our culture to
Exactly.
berate. Let's put it like this. It was okay to berate a black man. Now,
Right.
some people, all right, we got to understand the times, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And not get angry about the times. Okay, in those times when that woman was berating that black man, you got to understand that there were women who were not berating them and would tell
Mm-hmm.
you, don't do them like that. They need all the encouragement they need. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so as a result, you often had black men who would lash out. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and hit the black woman, and she wouldn't leave. It wasn't just because she wouldn't leave because of economic reason. She didn't leave because then she would say, well, you know what, uh i i i i, I attacked his manhood.
She would justify the behavior.
Yes, okay. And she did attack his manhood, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so in our culture, we as women took a lot of things, even abuse, because we were trying to fix the problem, which
Right.
is helping our men to feel like a man. All right. That's not an excuse, but we got to understand the mentality of it.
Oh yeah.
All right. Now, again, I say here we are in 2021, and the very same issues that we had back in slavery, back in the 60s, the 70s, these things are still there because what they were looking futurely. Okay. Right now, I remember when Janet Jackson came out with "What Have You Done for Me Lately?"
Yeah. Back in the 80s. Oh
Okay,
yeah.
all right, think about this. This was a woman. What have you done for me lately? Okay, again, hip hop music releasing something in the atmosphere about independent black women and us being able to do whatever we want to do, and then telling men, what you've done for me lately? You ain't did nothing. I can see about myself. Do you see what I'm saying? So even in the music, there were times where women women released or argued, or however you want to put it, their independence, their need actually for dominance, and also the need for the man to step up.
I think that you're true, because when Janet
Mm-hmm.
Jackson released that entire album,
Mm-hmm.
when she had interviews about it,
Mm-hmm.
it the whole album was about her independence. It was
Uh-huh.
inheritance from her father, and from her previous marriage, and just
Mm-hmm.
coming into her own as a woman, as a
Right.
young woman, as a young adult woman. And so I think that although the intention of you understood what she was saying,
What's
especially in the interviews and stuff,
uh-huh.
like you said, we don't understand the subtlety of what we're releasing, or what we are, the
Yes.
seeds that we're
Mm-hmm.
sowing when we get behind it. Because then fast forward, R&B, obviously it starts, you start seeing R&B, especially among female singers, how it evolved, and now it got even more risque, and now I'm even more independent. Then you come up with, Destiny's Child talking about, can you pay my bills, my, all of these different things
Mm-hmm.
about the independent woman and things like that, and what the expectations are. Meanwhile, we're still seeing that family structure change. And it's interesting because Horace brought this up last night about rap songs. So you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
R&B. He was talking about hip hop, and he said so crazy.
Yes.
He said because one of the rappers that he really liked back in the day when he was a music producer and doing A&R, he was like, come to find out, he won't even live. The dude won't even live in the life he was rapping about. This dude was married with a whole family, but his
Yeah.
persona was something totally different. He said it's crazy how he said, but understanding how music and all of that shapes our culture. And I said it absolutely does. And we've said that also here on this show in earlier parts of the season, and how we our artistic creativity shapes culture, not just our
Mm-hmm.
culture, but overall culture everywhere. And so looking at this whole role of independence, and the black woman's independence, at the same time, at what price? Because we just found out what price. At the
That
end
was
of the
it
day,
was
where's
yeah.
our protection? We still don't have that protection. And I thought about this last night after our conversation. I was like, some of the things I don't get to do. Like I'm very cautious. I want to do certain things, but at the same time, I'm not living in fear, but I have enough wisdom to know what's going on in the world today. It's not wise for me to go outside at night by myself, to go to a function at night by myself when I don't have nobody to walk me to my car, and vice versa, depending on how dark the parking lot is, right? And so while I may want to go to a night affair, it's not necessarily prudent or safe, possibly, right? How many other, not just black women, but women overall, but in talking about black women, feel the same sentiment. But at the same time, there are some who don't care. You know what I mean? And so
What
feeling that level of safety and security, and knowing that you can't even depend on another black man to keep you safe. And I say that because before my neighbors moved, I didn't have no problem feeling good, feeling okay going out at night, even if it's to the store or coming back from church or whatever, because they looked out for me. It was when the pandemic started, go check on her. Is she okay? And I had that. And then my neighbor died, his brother moved out, and now it's like,
Well, that has also to do with the sense of community,
yeah,
regardless of color. That was one of the things we had. We had a sense of community, and and one of the arguments and research has to do with the reason um, black women are not being protected so much by black men uh, has to do with economics, going back to that word,
mm-hmm.
okay, uh, the justice system, and how we are perceived,
Right,
okay.
right,
Remember what I told you about the sassy mama versus the Jezebel.
right, right, right,
Okay,
right.
the sassy mama is actually that strong woman,
Mm-hmm.
and that strong black woman that knows how to run her family, rule her house, take care of her children, um, even her husband uh, bows down to her, and whatever she says, she gets. That's what, and then they would call the man henpecked
Right.
because whatever she
Was
said
under an
was
alpha
up.
female, what we would call an
Right.
alpha female today. Yeah.
That's what y'all call alpha female. But here was something else. Listen, in our culture, whose house is it? What do we say? Big mama. Everything was about Big Mama. it's not about daddy's house, it's about
Mama's
mama's
house.
house. All right. Uh and so you think about when I'm going to mama house. Even if there's a daddy in the home, what
I'm
do we
going to mom
say? I'm
house.
going to
Mom house.
mama house.
Right.
Okay, which means that guess what? You're seeing again who the role being reversed, as we said, because it's been
It's been taught.
historically passed down since slavery. Now, guess what? These things that happen here in the U.S. were not atypical
Right.
of black families globally.
Right. Right.
Okay, and at one time, guess what? There were men who protected the women. But when they started turning on women, is when, this is my opinion, when addictions began to occur. More and more, as we saw our black men becoming addicted to not only alcohol, but to drugs, especially the one when crack was introduced. Before crack, there was heroin, a little cocaine, but in those days, even amongst sinners, they'd say there's honor among thieves. There still was a
Code.
respect, a code where you respected mama and you respected your sisters, unless she was out there on the street and had become a prostitute. And even then, brothers were trying to keep their sisters, hear what I'm saying,
Right.
from
Out of
getting
that
out
life.
there on
Yeah.
the streets and getting into that life. All
Yeah.
right. But when crack came, it began to do something to the mental state of the mind. And
Absolutely.
and so from my perspective, what I observed was that when that came in, we began to see a total disrespect for self-care, for self, because listen, your uncle was out there on heroin for years. But there was still, like you said, there was a code. There was even
There was still a presence of mind,
there
and
was
I
still
think
a
that
presence of mind
the
for,
deeper you want to get into
right,
this high, this state of high,
yes. There was still
it
some
start
level of
eating away your brain
self-respect.
cells.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
because
a level of self-respect
yeah,
and respect. And so we talk about it, even how there was a level of respect even for the church on the corner when you would walk by,
you
because it
walk
was
across the
the
street.
church.
Oh yeah, you didn't do stuff on the same side of
You
the street,
didn't
but church,
do
you going
things
across the street.
right.
You going across the
So
street.
so enter this new tool.
Right. Right.
And it was and actually it wasn't that many females on it. It was more males, again, to humble, to destroy, to berate the black man. And so when you get back to why were they taking it, because they didn't feel they were men, they felt less of a man,
Right.
whatever reason. It began to affect the black family, it affected our neighborhoods.
Right.
And guess what? Economically and financially, we began to spiral
Out
more
of
and
control.
more and more. So that
It
by
was
the
a
time,
coping mechanism.
right? So by
But
the
not realizing that that coping
right,
mechanism was eating away at your very brain
eroding, yes, it
cells.
was
And it,
eroding the mindset. And
yeah,
so there came a point where the black man was eroding and black women was saying, I've got to step up even now to the plate. I
right.
got to do more and more and more and more. And thus what? The strong black woman, because now um, the man definitely isn't in the house. Here's another thing: welfare. Another way to divide. I don't know if people recall, but there was a time if a man was in the house, they stopped, you couldn't get welfare.
Sure couldn't.
Okay. So here was another way to break the family, was because you kept the man out the house, and they would actually come by
And do checks.
and check the house to see if there was any sign of a man living there. And if it was, guess what? It cut off the check. So now here is the black woman. Maybe she got a man, or maybe she was married and they separated, or even if they were living together. Now she's got to do what? She's got to do all she can to keep that check and to protect her children and her household and do what's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the black man now got to run out the back door, stay hidden, move his things, okay, or what have you. So there are a lot of things,
Right, right.
okay, and in this, it's berating really the black man,
Mm-hmm.
but at some point, it's making the woman look like Big Mama. Oh, she's our savior. She's the one who knows. She's the one who take care of the house. She's the one who does this. And everything made the woman look more glamorous.
Right. When really it was breaking her down too.
It was breaking
Because
her down.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. The Bible says the woman is the weaker sex.
Thank
We
you.
were never intended to carry the weight of what we currently carry now, but because of this doctrine, this principle, it's literally the making of someone that you can control. And it boils down to economics. And we're going to get into the black dollar next week. And we're going to end the season with the black dollar next week. And you're going to understand how all of this is layering together, because black women control the money in the household, typically in the back in the day, especially, because she was the one inside the house. So she had more access to learning and reading and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And seeing how they managed and did business and certain things. And that was handed down. And not saying that black men don't and can't, but typically back in the day, we're talking about, how things were slavery, post-slavery, up until the 70s when a woman could have a bank account in her name without a man having to co-sign for her. So up until that point, the woman did handle the household. She did manage the household finances. She balanced the checkbook. She paid the bills. The man worked. He brought the money home, paid the bills. Listen, how much you need for the bills? Gave her that money. He kept his little spending money, whatever he was going to do. And that was life. That was life. And we're not here to say what was right and what was wrong, but that was how things ended up flowing and being. And so that woman, y'all be talking about, oh, I want my woman barefoot and pregnant in the house. I want a housewife, all this kind of stuff. But do you understand the full context of what life was like at that time? That's not reading the Bible, talking about master and slave, but you're reading it out of context. And you're not really understanding the full totality of what Jesus is saying in some of those stories in the New Testament. Go and sit down somewhere. So it's the same thing. You can't want a marriage or relationship like what Big Mama and them had. They stayed together for 30, 40, 50 years. Some of them women stayed because they had to. Other times they stayed because what else do we have?
And
because that's the question. What else they got? What else do you have? All you had was each other in a sense of community.
So, and let's go here as we're talking, because everything that we're talking about, what did I say? Undermines the word of God.
Yeah.
And so even in this, there were times that the Willie Lynches and even others used the word of God.
Oh, yeah.
To suppress.
Oh, it's all up in here.
Black women, black men, but to do it, period. Now, you said something about ownership. Yes. I want to talk a little bit here, and I need you to understand this, because if this was happening in
1712,
right, in white America, or in Europe, let's say in the European culture, imagine what it was like for us, especially in America. There is something called the law of coverture. The law of coverture, get this, was a set of laws that said a married woman's identity was covered. Hear me good. Was covered by her husband's. Y'all hear us be talking about, do you have a covering? Coverture was a set of laws that said a married woman's identity was covered by her husband. since her legal identity and rights were covered by her own, by her husband, then that means her own legal identity was non-existent. Okay? That's the law of coverture.
Uh-huh.
This law came into being in it was under this system. It was actually developed between the years 1000 to 1500, what to 1500. I'm telling you this history because this law of coverture was adopted and brought to the English colonies, brought to America. Okay? So it actually started in Europe. It was brought to the colonies. An English judge named William Blackstone wrote this law called Commentaries on the Laws of England in the 18th century. And it gave a complete description of this system of coverture. So something from the 18th century was brought, hear what I'm saying, to the colonies.
Mm-hmm.
Since a woman, hear what I'm saying, was not a person legally. See, women, we got to understand something. That means that you could not own any property, including the clothes on your back. You could not even own or control your own body. That's why there was no such thing as a man raping his wife.
And do you understand the importance of why reproductive rights and what's going on with these stupid laws?
Oh, hear what I'm
Why
saying?
a virgin in Texas can write an anti-abortion bill in Texas?
Okay,
You even never
listen.
even had sex before, but okay.
Okay, she could not make decisions for her children against her husband's wishes. She could not even sign legal documents or enter into contracts. She could not even keep her own salary. And she could not get an education against her husband's wishes. Now, you got to understand, this was for Europeans. So when you brought this to the colonies, to the United States, then you're going to bring slaves over. So guess what? White women didn't have no rights. So guess what kind of rights we would have was even worse. Okay?
I made a point because this is another way to dehumanize and to demean and to
Yes.
it's another mental mind game. But years ago, even in print, they never used a woman's name in print in
Nope.
an article. It was always she's Mrs. So and so. It's
Yes.
whatever his name was. If his name was Jack Black, this is Mrs. Jack Black.
That's the
Never
law of
ever
coverage.
used her name. She could be
Thank
in
you.
the photo, she could be standing there, but she was not a living person. She was not a human being. She was that man's trophy. She was that man's. Everything was always in relation to the man, and so it's and again, if this was how they treated white women, because first of all, they ain't even interviewing no black people for nothing
Thank
during
you.
this time. What did you think, like mom said, it was doing to black? We was even less than that. First of all, here in the colonies, we was 3/5 of black people, specifically a black man was 3/5 of a person. How do you break a person down to 3/5? I don't even know. Cause what you gonna do? Take 3/5 of the body? If you take 3/5 of the body, you ain't got nothing. But anyway, let alone black women having any rights. And so it's interesting that all of this stuff, and I find that some of the laws that are trying to be enacted today about, reproductive rights and certain things, I really think these people are pulling stuff from, like what you said, way back in the day that was going on over in England time, because there's some people who still can't let go. They still love that whole dynamic, and I'm going like, well, just go on over there and move over there.
But see, here's again,
they want to be free, but be using some of the same, pick and choose and cherry picking the stuff that they want to take and bring over here. And it's like,
and they're using, and not only are they using that, but they are misappropriating the word of God, because when this man wrote this law, he and this commentary, let's say about this, you will hear whenever they want to put women in their place, they will go back to the Bible and say, go back to Genesis 2:18, where he says he made the man to be alone. He said, but I will make a helper,
A helper don't
a
mean slave
helpmate.
though,
But that's not a slave. That's
or
that.
or
Oh, thank
dominate or
you.
demean.
So yes, so they go back into to that, but yet and still they forget that both man and woman was created in the image of God, and God is a helper. And you don't demean God.
First of all,
He,
God is love,
he,
and by dehumanizing His creation, because He
mm-hmm,
said in Genesis that let us make man in our
okay,
image. We're
mm-hmm,
made in the image and likeness of God. Seed can only produce after its own kind. We are little God. We are God's little G.
thank you.
So to dehumanize another person, what I don't care race or creed,
Mm-hmm,
color, sex, whatever, and you say you're a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, and you read the Bible, you dehumanizing and you participate in the dehumanizing of people by with your silence, because silence often is consent, because you're not saying anything and you're not speaking up to stop these dehumanizing and marginalization
mm-hmm.
practices, then and you're contributing to the oppression of other people, then you need to go check your spiritual pulse and ask yourself, do I really believe what's written? Is this really in my heart? And how can I help bring
Mm-hmm.
about more unity between this group of people? How can I stop the oppression, the systematic oppression of this group of people, so that they can come back and have a sense of community and have something for themselves, and be able to have come back together and not have this perversion of family? Because what's going on now is nothing but a perversion of family, and that's
Yes,
what the Antichrist does. Everything he does is a
is
perversion
perverted
of God's creation. So what we're seeing amongst black men and black women is a systematic perversion
version.
of the family structure to bring about nothing but division.
Yes,
So that's
and
what we have: women who are
mhm.
operating in a spirit of fear and don't even know that everything you do is rooted in fear.
And we're supposed to be raising our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And the fear and admonition of the Lord says, honor your father and your mother, not honor your father.
Hey, ah,
Honor
Shabbat,
it says, honor your mother and your
your father.
father, that your days may be prolonged upon the earth that the Lord gives you. And I've always said, oh, did they die young because they were not honoring their mother and father? Because the Bible says you will
Yeah,
have long days when you honor your mother and your father.
right,
So again, here when you teach dishonor or you belittle that man in front of the child, then the child does not see you honoring and respecting him, and so they don't.
because
Okay,
children do what they see. They
see.
mimic. They don't do what you tell them to. It's not that whole
Okay.
do as I say, not as I do. That don't
Mhm.
work. That never work.
And in Ephesians, it talks about be subject to one another out of reverence to Christ. So being subject to means I don't lord things over you and vice versa.
Right.
But for us to get past where we are, black men versus black women, and realize there isn't any verses. There isn't any or should not be any competition among us as far as who's going to rule or what have you.
Right.
We've got to come together and say, listen, love, going back to that word love.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When you love the Lord and you honor the Lord, you're going to love his people. And then you're going to follow the commandments. You're going to follow those things. Be kind. There's nothing like being kind to one another.
That's
There's
right.
nothing like showing compassion
Mm-hmm.
for one another. Okay. There's nothing like within our own race. We've got to understand, man, guess what? She's not superwoman.
Right. And
Woman,
wasn't meant to
you're
be.
not superwoman.
And not meant to be.
Man, guess what? You not you not you're not the dictator, okay? Okay, I may be your king, you may be my king, and I'm your queen, but you're not the dictator.
Right.
And so these are little things that we've got to learn and adjust to. And so there are men who protect women, okay? But because I'm going to say this, social media and the news, they need those dollars and their cents. What made headlines?
Controversy,
Okay,
drama.
controversy and drama makes
That's what
headlines.
sells.
Okay. And so that's what sells. And so you taking care of that black woman, protecting that black woman, that doesn't sell.
Right.
That
Right.
doesn't sell. There was an article in
But
the
fear and
Washington,
anger and all of that stuff
right.
that incites
There was a
emotionalism.
right. There was an article in the Washington Post concerning Black Lives Matter.
Mhm.
And the article had to do with where the black men, okay, protecting the women. And so they were talking about George Floyd and different ones who were being killed and Breonna Taylor.
Right.
And they were
Breonna Taylor,
talking
and the
about,
sad thing is Breonna Taylor was in her bed asleep with her man.
right. But not only that, what the article was talking about was how things are treated differently when it's a black man versus a female. Um, it was talking about at the same time all of this came out in that article. The woman was also talking about us as black females, what you were saying, how we are being left out there because we are, quote, the strong role model, the superwoman, and how even when it comes down to healthcare, we're treated differently because if a black woman comes in saying she's in a lot of pain and a white woman come in saying she's in a lot of pain, the white woman's going to get treated first because they don't even believe black women have pain like that. That goes back to the Willie Lynch thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. If you report a black woman missing or something has happened to her versus a white woman, how they treat it is they're going to say, oh, are you sure she just didn't get sick of your stuff and walk away?
Did she not just run away?
Did she not just run away from a bad situation? Versus, oh, the white woman, oh,
You're not going to get that benefit of the doubt.
yeah. And so what we as a people, black men and women, must understand that this, some of the things that we're saying and doing has been indoctrinated into our culture, and it goes all the way back to slavery. And a lot of it we're not even aware of because what it has been not only indoctrinated, it has been assimilated. So just as you assimilate into an environment, it has been assimilated into us. And a lot of it we laugh off, but the subtleness of it. I remember Amos and Andy, the Amos and Andy show, and how they portrayed the fictional woman in that, and how she would beat Kingfish over the head and call him a coon and lazy, confused and unemployed, and because he was married to Sapphire Stevens, and she regularly berated him, and we thought that was funny, okay, as a failure. So that was to it reinforce the William Lynch syndrome, okay? However, although we laughing at it, in real life, in reality, not only was the black man being mistreated, but guess what? So were black women. Because this was during the Jim Crow period.
Yeah.
Blacks were really being beaten, jailed, and killed for arguing with white people, okay?
Right.
But yet and still in Amos and Andy, they're going to show you this woman who can argue with white men and get away with it. Because guess what? It looked like It appeared like it was okay. And they would laugh about it because guess what? This was the big mama. She ruled everything, even the white people household. Wow.
And it was all a trap.
And it was all a trap. It was all part of reinforcement, this mindset that guess what, the black woman gets away with stuff when in reality she was not getting away with anything.
No, she was the punchline of the joke.
Yes.
And that's what it was. And you have to understand that I believe that, in all of what we're talking about, black people, we have to remember that we're the punchline sometimes of the joke. And we don't get it. And now we're in a state, we're in a place where a lot of us have the presence of mind to understand that we're no longer willing to be the punchline of the joke. And because we're no longer willing to be the punchline of the joke, we're getting all of the
Mm-hmm.
pushback and stuff
Mm-hmm.
from mainstream media, and society. And now we are obviously being villainized for saying we're no longer going to be the punchline of the joke. Like we're taking care of our own. We're going to do what we need to do. And so when we say the buck stops here, then what happens is you villainize groups like the Black Panther Party. If you really do your own research and look into what they did, all they did was take care of their own community. They provided food. The current
Yes, they
welfare
did.
system is based off of Huey P. Newton's dissertation on what it is to take care of community,
Yes.
feeding the community, having
Uh-huh.
aftercare programs, feeding kids before school. And when you read it, I saw situations where in Chicago, they didn't just do it in California and Oakland, they did it in Chicago. And one morning, they were trying to feed the children before school. And the police came and they urinated and they really just kind of basically destroyed that breakfast. Those children couldn't eat. But he found that when you feed these children, they can focus in school and they do so much better. And so a lot of what we've gone through, and when we do things like let's just take care of our own community, we're not depending on government, we're not doing anything, we're policing our own communities. And and by policing meaning securing and protecting our own communities, walking our black women from the grocery store home, riding the bus with them if necessary, doing all of the things that's necessary to provide for our community, then we're villainized. Organizations like that are villainized because there was really nothing. But when I say the system fears black unity, it tells you this right here from the beginning. The whole point was to divide and conquer so that you can just lead. We are a system of economics. And when we stop participating in the economic system, this is the economic system of America, period, point blank. And it tells you how it's set up, and everything that's happening in our economic system in this country is all set up and designed by that. So when we stop participating in that economic system and unhooking and unplugging from it, now you're disrupting their cash flow and how things operate. So now we got to find somebody to villainize so we can stop this disruption. And so can we get the focus off of whatever this is? And so now we've got, okay, let's divide and conquer. And let's mess up the family structure, because if we mess up the family structure, then we can keep them economically poor. And if we can keep you economically poor, we can keep you mentally piss poor, because again, it's a mental mind game. And so we can keep you oppressed in all these different areas. We can keep you divided. And we can keep you divided. You're not going anywhere. And we've got to get back to the original structure that God created for man and woman. And at the end of the day, black women are tired and exhausted because we're carrying weights we weren't designed to carry. The Bible says we're the weaker sex. That don't mean that we don't bring nothing to the table. It just means we weren't created to handle all of this. And you want to know why you're collapsing under the weight of everything that you got on your shoulders? Because you weren't meant to carry that. But somebody created a system for you to do that. Somebody created a system of division to separate us. Mama, mute yourself. And so that's why we are where we are. And my prayer is that we get back to a place of unity and oneness, because remember, God said when the people are one, there
Whether
is
people are
nothing
one that we
that
cannot
they
accomplish.
cannot accomplish, right? When a black man and a black woman come together, my God, like seriously, we can totally turn around the lie and all this perception of what a black family unit is and what black children are like and so on and so forth when we come together and operate truly as one. And so, as believers, we're not supposed to be following a lot of this stuff. We're supposed to, sit down and ask God for wisdom. on all of this stuff that's happening, and ask God, what is my part? What role do I play in helping bring about this unity and stop the division and get back on track with your original design?
And with that, I wanted to point out something. I knew there was an article out there I wanted to discuss before we left. This paper was prepared November the 19th, 1920. That's last year, on overcoming challenges faced by Black boys and men. And it was prepared for the Brookings Institution. Okay. And this paper was prepared, and it's about also creating a new deal in which the core priorities of the Race, Prosperity, and Inclusive Initiative. Well, if it's Race, Prosperity, and Inclusive Initiative, why did you address Black boys and men without putting women in it? Again, here is something.
The further marginalization of Black women.
And division. Okay,
Yep.
but also of the new Boys and Men Project launched today out of the Center on Children and Families. Okay, what I'm saying is, first of all, the challenges faced by Black men and boys are in the Black community, period. Women face challenges too. So see, what I'm looking at is, it says, witness the creation in 2019 of a new, listen to this, commission on the social status of Black men and boys, charged with recommending policies to improve upon or augment current government programs.
Well, what programs are you gonna have without Black women up in there? How does that support the Black family structure?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And again, this is why you got to look at what's the underlying agenda.
Because
Who are you
what they're
trying to erase and why?
because what they're saying is Black boys and men in particular run the gauntlet of a specific brand of racism.
And Black women don't.
Racism is racism.
Right. And Black women
Now,
don't.
thank you. Now you see, you got to look at these again. We at the very beginning, what did you say? You got to look at who's writing it, what they're trying to do, and why. But I told you at the very beginning, in 1965, they recognized there was something wrong with the Black family. Challenges facing the Negro family. That's what they said.
Yep.
So why aren't we still looking at the family? Because what did we say? Black women face racism. And what are you talking about? A certain brand of racism. Racism is racism in racism.
And that's the point.
And now you're trying to take and say, treat racism like a rose, a yellow rose, a red rose, and all kind of roses. No, racism is racism.
That's
love is love. Unity is unity. Division is division. Separation is separation. There's no such thing as a brand of division, a brand of separation, or a brand of unity. It is either you're separated or you're united.
And that's the thing about it. And that's how you know there's some bias in that research. That's how you know that this is looked at from a very skewed lens. Because there's no way that you can you're marginalizing the marginalized. Like it's another layer.
Well, again, here you're about to make some money looking at economics, looking at money, because now you're going to create programs that goes after the Black man, okay, and Black boys. All right. Now, once you investigate this and do these programs, where will that lead the Black woman? At the same time, when you develop programs that's designed to go after the Black woman, where does that lead the Black man?
You have to also
Again,
understand that this is another way to work around IRB protocols when it comes to human trials. So when you create these new programs, it's a way to be able to test theory
thank you. Okay.
without actually officially testing a theory.
And guess what? In the black community, you don't
And
have to tell me that.
we are favorite playing ground,
And guess what?
testing ground.
And you don't have to tell me that there are issues in my community. I already know it.
Right.
Now, what I have to do as a person in my community, as a believer in Jesus Christ, begin to instill the proper values in my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, okay, and help them to carry it out.
Right.
It I've got to renew my mindset. And there are others in the black community. You got to start renewing your mindset and stop looking at a person as either black women, you're super, and looking at black men, oh, y'all ain't all of that. I really don't need you. Okay. There are just some things we've got to do because God wants us as one.
Yep.
Wow.
And we can't
God
be
wants
one
us as one. I
divided
know
like
it's time
this.
for, yeah, and we cannot come together divided, like you said, like this. So whether it's black woman versus black men or the pigmentation of our skin, guess what? The only one who can stop it is us.
That's
It's
right.
time to say enough is enough and do something about it.
That's it. So next week we round out the season talking about the black dollar, and it's going to be a good conversation. I've got more to share about the
Woo!
black dollar and how just some food for thought as far
Whoa.
as how our black dollar is treated. Again, it's all an economic system, and how can we unhook
It's
from
all
it
in the system.
and get to our own economic empowerment as a people? But again, you got to get away from all that division and come together and unite. And so getting being cautious of the language and the culture of today, and remember that we are culture setters, not
Mm-hmm.
culture followers. If you keep that in mind, you can really set yourself free. And so that is enough for today. We went a little over our time, but this is a very good conversation. And next week we're gonna get into the thick of the black dollar. Same bad time, same bad channel. Tell somebody about It's a Wrap with the Prophets. This is actually season 4 for the culture, and we'll see y'all next time. We love you so much. Thank you for tuning.
All right.